Welcome back to Never Settle, the podcast designed to motivate, empower you, and to thrive. In honor today, I have the founder of Cancer Wellness Magazine, Caylei Vogelzang. She's going to be taking us through what is a cancer and how can we redefine it. It speaks near and dear to my heart. Warriors, you know this as an 18-year cancer survivor. Caylei, thank you so much.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. It's so wonderful to be here because I know that a lot of our work and values align. And so I'm just delighted to share my perspective from my experience with cancer.
Before we get into today's episode, I want to first give a thank you and shout out to Zencastr, our sponsor of today's show. Zencastr is the chosen platform that I'm hosting this podcast on, which has made it easy for me to host this podcast from anywhere in the world and takes a lot of the guesswork out of it. Stay tuned for more in today's episode. Which I would love to hear. I personally do not know, so I would love for you to share your experience and what has driven you on this path to found Cancer Wellness Magazine?
Certainly. So, my husband, Nicholas, is a trial attorney and has specialized in asbestos related disease. So, mostly mesothelioma. But as we've grown, we've actually expanded to a lot of other cancer types that we serve on the plaintiff side. And so it's exposure that's done in the workplace. It's glyphosate, for example, which is Roundup, um, asbestos, certain types of other drugs that are known to cause cancer. And so we fight for these people, which oftentimes it's a case of wrongful death. So, with that sort of heaviness in mind, I was sitting at my kitchen table with another lovely woman, Morella, from my organization, and we were brainstorming about what we could do more for not only our clients but our clients' families. And we found that people would you get to know your clients, and you can feel kind of what they're feeling to a point in an empathetic way. And so when you're asked questions like, what would you do or what would you recommend, and you don't have a ton of answers, or you say, well, American Cancer Society has great programming, and there's a yoga studio that I like down the street that I know has some programming for cancer. We both agreed that that was really inadequate because we were dealing with people who are oftentimes losing a loved one, and so we thought of it as not only supporting the person who's going through the journey, but also those other people who are affected. So certainly the supporters and the caregivers, and then also what does that support look like if the journey ends up being positive in outcome, and understanding that the journey never really ends. Um, so with that, we decided to come up with a resource guide for our clients and their families that would list um, some of the things that we thought would be helpful that are not necessarily in the medical space, because oftentimes people are going to treatment and it's a lot of back and forth from treatment. It's a lot of drugs. It's a lot of work for their families. And so we said, what can we do that's not even necessarily um, involves compensation on a monetary level, but what can we do to really add value? So we started this little magazine. We said we make it pretty, and that we would try to include local resources, include local charities that we feel like do very well, and serve the cancer affected population. So that was really the naissance, if you will, of cancer wellness. We um, published our first issue in 2018, so we're still fairly new. And it turned into something very different than what I imagined it to be from the beginning, right? I imagined it to be kind of a resource guide that had evergreen content, useful to anyone who's really interested in health, but certainly has a special ear and tone for those affected by cancer. So we started with that, and we decided that one of the really big pieces that was missing was lifestyle. So what happens when someone's diagnosed? It's atomic. That it is
Which
inexplicable.
yeah, it stops you in your track. Just to interject, I have chills and I'm breathing here because those who are listening, and I just want to add this in because what you have said is so profound. I was surrounded by asbestos when I was younger, and there has never been a real reason why I had Hodgkin's lymphoma. There are many people who will tell me otherwise and hypothesize, and I'm sure without giving a clinical diagnosis in this interview, we can all shake our heads and say, yeah, well, that didn't add anything better to it. So I have chills that you're saying that that's where the origin was. And the fact of when you are diagnosed and you are going through, there is not the element of lifestyle. Because when I offered to my oncologist, I was in the PD oncology at the time, thankfully, because it was a little more light. I do not like clowns, but at least it had a little bit more uplifting vibe of life. And
Yes.
there was, I said to her, I'm going to have some green tea recommended by my pediatrician. She says, well, I don't recommend it, but as long as it doesn't
Oh
interfere
no.
with your chemotherapy. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to back
Okay.
pocket that and just do what it's tea and it's green. And now, of course, we know all of the
Absolutely.
benefits from it. And even after they said that there's nothing I can do to help increase my lung capacity, and I'm like, I do pranayama and yoga every
Breathing
single day.
exercises.
like, but you're in
Exactly.
great health and shape. And I'm like, yeah, it's called pranayama. You should
Yes.
recommend it to everybody. So please continue on because I had to express that
Oh,
in
of
the depths of
course.
what you're sharing is I relate on such a personal level and applaud that you've taken that path in 2018 to say, you know what, we're going to launch this. People need this and allow it to evolve to where it has become because I think it's spot on.
Oh, well, thank you. When someone's diagnosed, yes, atomic, and people very oftentimes feel pushed into a corner and feel very unseen. They feel like they're diseased and that other people, and unfortunately, it is a case in many circumstances that you are put into a box. And my feeling and hope is that we all have some of the same desires, some of the same aspirations. So whether you have cancer or not, um, the aspirational concept of travel is great, for example. And so one of my jobs was to figure out how to find programs where people can be nurtured and their cancer journey kind of understood while enabling them to visit some fabulous places, and whether it's for recovery or whether it's for pretty much anything. I have a very good, lovely relationship with Healing Hotels of the World now. And so, fortunately, I've found that not only are there hotels, but there are also great programs and people who train the hoteliers. So, those types of doors are amazing for lifestyle because it's limiting to think that someone wouldn't want to change their scenery, and I think especially in the case of cancer, we need perspective change, and to be in a very supported place is is great. So from travel and then other elements of fashion, I'm very happy to say that I feel that has been changing. There are some great brands that really do understand the cancer journey more, And so it's really fun to feature that. But really, anything from travel to nutrition to exercise to um, just trying to figure out what will put people in a place of greater happiness, ease, and hopefully set them up for healing.
Let me take a little break here. You've noticed I've been doing a lot more podcasting lately. And it's not that I've had more time, it's that Zencastr has made it a lot easier to record high quality video, high quality audio. They even have post-production services right within their platform and software. It comes out a lot easier, faster, cleaner, so I can do what it is that I'm really good at, and that's connecting with you, the listener, and the audience who wants to chime in what it is to never settle. Healing in every way. And you mentioned about being put into a box in a category. And I remember writing in my book, You Become a Number. And that's exactly what I was given at Yale New Haven Hospital, to no fault of their own. It's just what you get. You get a little ID card at the time, and it had a number on it. And I remember I memorized at that time that number, and that's what you became. And the individualization becomes nullified because you as a person are just another patient, whereas you're personifying and saying, no, you're embodying life, and you are a singularity, not a whole. So I think that that's great to break it down and to encompass all of the areas of, I call it wealth. So it's WELLTH, and then that incorporates everything you just shared about travel, about your environment, your spirituality, what you're putting in. They're all different fuel lines to your greater health and well-being. Now, this segues exactly into what we were originally conceptualizing: is what is a cancer then? What defines what is a cancer?
So I think there's a clinical definition of cancer, um, which is really, I'd say it's in a bit of a box. I think cancer is I agree that with you, in fact, that cancer is anything that causes um, disease. And I'll say disease as dis and ease. We'll separate those, but the cancer. I personally believe that cancers start oftentimes long before they're diagnosed in a clinical fashion. And so, with asbestos, for example, or mesothelioma, there's a latency period that can be 20 or 30 years sometimes. And so, if you consider that and that kind of burden that exposure to toxicities, whether they are external or perhaps internal, and really caused by how we're thinking and how we're and our behavioral patterns, that we have to necessarily figure out how to lessen those burdens and understand that the concept of wellness versus being sick or having disease are actually they're a lot closer than um, than we often think, and I believe that you end up if you're trying to arrest negativity and some of those thoughts that we know both mentally and physically are disabling, that's cancerous.
I have almost tears because exact phrases that you have shared are what I wrote in my book, Living Cancer Free. And that cancer is redefined as anything causing dis-ease within the body, and that it can start long before, et cetera, et cetera. That is exact words that are on the back of my book. So there's no doubt the profoundness of what's being shared in both. You're reaching the masses by creating this publication. So I personally thank you for that, and to put a focus as well into, like you shared, the lifestyle, because it's so much more. And you think of there's a physical, then there's a spiritual, then there's, exactly as you said before, the environmental, and how all of those overlap in every area of the life. Now, if you were, that was the serious part that I was exuding back in there.
Yes,
Now you
that's
bring it
okay.
back up, and if you were to share with listeners 3 to 5 top tips to remove a cancer, anything causing disease in your life today, what would that
Yep.
be?
Yoga, meditation, um, and finding support. Whether in some ways, so whether it's online, for example, via our cancer wellness, one of our cancer wellness platforms, where you're able to connect with other people and other support. Perhaps it's enriching or developing better bonds with your family.
Mm.
Uh, so those interpersonal relationships, to really make sure you're paying attention to those. And I believe personally that exercise is critical. I also believe that the same things kind of apply to pre-cancer, or anyone who doesn't have cancer, to cancer, to post-cancer. So the same types of practices in nutrition and meditation and movement and sort of camaraderie and support. They're all interconnected,
It's one big
and
giant web.
contribute.
Yes. This has been so profound. We're going to drop all of those links below in the description for the community, for, of course, your website, Cancer Wellness Magazine, the publication as well, and for others to get support if you're seeking, because it's not just if you have cancer that this can benefit. It's preventative. It's post, there's so much that goes with it. And if you're in the thick of it, then you're right there. I feel honored to have this time with you, Caylei, and also to be a contributor within your publication. So I thank you and your
I am
team.
Yes, I am just thrilled, and we're so delighted to have you on the cover
Thank you.
of our next publication. And please do. I hope that you continue doing all the wonderful things you do, because it's your story and the stories of other people who are experiencing a journey from any perspective that are touched by cancer, who uh, who are who need this, and who are I think at a very deep level, I think need to heal by virtue of understanding that it is a cumulative value of all of the things that we do. And so in closing, I will say thank you so much for having me, and I will say that I believe it's not just 3 things that I would say can help arrest or alleviate. You really have to consider all of the things in your life, and go from there. I feel like we're our best teachers, right? And so, if it's your green tea, or if it's a second opinion, or it's just anything that is is going to add value to yourself. I wouldn't call it selfishness. I would call it self-care.
Here.
All of those things that contribute are really going to be that which, well, hopefully make you feel better.
Great takeaway. Caylei, thank you so much. That wraps up today's episode of Never Settle. I want to thank you for tuning in, and again, a big thank you to Zencastr. If you'd like to try Zencastr and podcasting, you can use my code, which is linked below, for a 3-month discount on your service. See you again on another upcoming episode of Never Settle.